I want to share a story with you guys. I think it's going to be really interesting because it was kind of funny, and this is just going to give you a broad overview of how things have shaped my life, okay, and perspectives on things that have happened. So I did grow up in the ghetto, if you guys don't know, and I'm working on being an entrepreneur, a great loving father, a husband, and really getting out there and crushing it. I was in the military 8 years. I did some time. I did an overseas deployment, yada yada yada, and now I'm just trying to run this company and make people assets and give them value back into their life because they are valuable. So that's enough about me. Let's get into the story. So back when I was probably 20 years old, I lived in a 3-story apartment complex all the way on the top floor. Okay, I was still in the military at the time. I'm trying to figure out how I'm going back and forth to work, still figuring out stuff in life, so on and so forth. So in the ghetto, as again, I am not, violence is not uncommon there. Okay, it's like a daily activity in the jungle. And so I had this 2 week training that I had to do for the military, and I had to do it in Virginia. And at the time, I was still trying to figure things out with a new apartment. So I asked my mom to order me a dresser. She did. And the dresser said it was supposed to be there before I left. However, it was not. And I said, okay, well, at the worst case, it'll just be at the bottom of the steps and I'll just have to take it upstairs. So I get back, come to find out the dresser is sitting right in front of my door. And I'm sitting there thinking, I'm like, wow, somebody brought this dresser up 3 flights of steps. And this wasn't like a little light stat put together dresser. This thing was massive. So I know it was heavy because it was probably made from mahogany. Not really. But with the amount of weight that dresser was, I think it was like 300 something pounds. And I was like, wow, whoever drug this upstairs they're a champ, you know? So I didn't think anything of it. I put the dresser together, everything's fine. About a week later, maybe 2 weeks, I'm walking home, got some pizza in my hand, gonna go watch a movie, everything's great. I got my little one with me. She's probably about 3 or 4 years old at the time. So we're walking back home, and all of a sudden, there's this husband and wife. They're arguing outside, and they're arguing about something of another party being involved. Okay, if you catch what I'm saying. I didn't want to be involved in it, so I was trying to wait at the end of the block, wait because they were sitting right on the front steps. So I'm like, well, I don't want to get into their conversation because for some reason things are drawn to me when I'm just trying to avoid them completely. And you'll know if you guys go and watch the other stories that I'm going to be uploading. So I'm sitting there waiting, I'm waiting and waiting and waiting. And then the wife ends up going in the car. The husband goes back inside the apartment. So I'm like, oh, it's clear for me to go. Let me get in. So I'm going. And then as soon as I go to turn the corner to go up the initial steps to get into the complex, he comes out the door. And all of a sudden, I'm held at gunpoint. He comes, we're about to pass just like this. Right as we go to connect and in passing between that initial doorway, he turns right to me, and then I have the gun at the time pointed at my stomach. And he's like, oh, well, you're going to take me to such and such block over here along with my kids and stuff like that. I'm like, no, I'm not. And he's like, oh, yeah, you are. And I said, well, what do I owe you? He's like, well, I'm the guy that took your dresser upstairs. Now I'm sitting here thinking, I'm like, this can't be serious. This guy can't be serious right now. And he was. Because I could tell this man was not moving. So I said, well, I gotta go upstairs and get my keys. Because he didn't see me park the car. He just figured maybe I walked to the pizza store and came back. So I said I had to get my keys. He's like, oh, okay. So I went upstairs. I called someone over to go watch the little one. Because this is like a 10-minute drive and back. So it was going to be quick, but I can't leave her there by herself. And this guy's waiting for me downstairs. So I'm like, all right. So anyway, I grabbed a force multiplier, okay, in the shape of a sharp object. And I had put it in my pocket, and I basically let the person know. I said, hey, if it comes to a point where I'm not back in 10 or 15 minutes, you need to call somebody. And that's because something already went down. And so I went back downstairs. The guy's standing right down at the bottom waiting for me. And I'm like, geez, man. So I go down the stairs. I'm about to walk out the door, and he's behind me at this point with the gun towards my lower back. So I don't pull anything funny. As soon as I walk out the door, I mean, 3 or 4 cop cars come up. They all get out and they have their rifles planted right on top of their cars, aiming at the doorway because somebody seen in this little mini hallway that I walked up that I was held at gunpoint, and someone said that he had a gun and reported it. So I didn't even get to walk downstairs yet before they're all guns drawn, ready to get down. And I said, I just put my hands up real slowly. I said, it's not me. And they're like, well, somebody has a gun. Someone has a gun. And I'm like, and so I kind of like tried to move to the side, but he had like made me kind of like positioned in front of him to be used as a shield. And at that point, as we walked down the steps, now this is the crazy part. As we walked down the steps, right? They obviously knew he at that point had the gun. So the third party that was involved all of a sudden comes up and she says the gun is mine in regards to it being hers. It's her item to be in possession. He just has it. And so they go through this whole thing of trying to check it. She doesn't have the paperwork. For some reason, it's not coming up or whatever. And eventually I, tell the cop, like, hey, I'm trying to go back inside. Well, this guy volunteers and speaks up for me. He's like, well, where were you guys heading? He says, my friend, meaning me, was going to take us to my girlfriend's house or whatever, pointing to the third party and her kids. So they go and inspect my car, to make sure I don't have anything in there for some odd reason. And they're checking the trunk, they're checking the glove compartment, everything like that. And I said I didn't have anything. And then they check his firearm, they unload it, take the magazine, put it in my glove box, and take the actual firearm, put it in my trunk, or vice versa, whatever. And then they, tap the back of the car and they're like, okay, you guys are good to go. No problem. So then I'm like, this just doesn't end for me. So I take the guy over. Now it's a quiet ride. It's a very quiet ride for that 10 minutes to take him across the city. I get across the city. I park the car. When I tell you, and this is just how people are there. When I tell you this guy sat there for a minute, and I had to tell him, like, you need to get the F out the car right now. And he turned around, he looked at me, he's like, hey, man. He tried to, like, give me a handshake and stuff. He's like, hey, man, thank you for taking me. If you ever need anything, I got you. Don't worry about it. If you ever have any problems, I got you. And now 15 minutes ago, oh, we had a bunch of problems. At least in my mind, we did. But I guess it was declared even. Clean slate. He took my dresser. I took him where he needed to go when he needed it. I didn't ask him to. I never even talked to the guy a day in my life prior to that day. So then he's trying to, give me a handshake and whatever. And I told him, like, dude, just get out my car. And then I was kind of cautious because he only had the magazine, but he didn't have the firearm. And the firearm was in the back of my trunk. So I got out the car, which I was thinking about it afterwards. Like, I probably should have stayed in, but I didn't want it to be one of those scenarios where then I get my car robbed on top of it and he drives off. So I got out the car to open the trunk because I don't want to get in the back of the head. And at the end of the day, I got out, I looked, he didn't load it or anything like that afterwards in front of me. He kind of just like tucked it away real quick. The other kids got out the car and then they went in the house. I never seen the guy again. So that's just like one of many stories, and I'll have to give you guys more. If you did like the story, comment below. What would you guys have done different? This is also the reason why I like teaching defense, is because I've been in a lot of different scenarios where I think I could have done something better, or maybe I just made the best move at the time. Either way, I was calm and collected under pressure, and that's something that has to be developed. That's very hard to do. So let me guys know what you think in the comments. Stay tuned for the next story. Be an asset.